So what we're looking at here is like the upcoming like 3.2 version of the game, which also has like a new original tile set from our pixel artist Carrie Lake. And Corey's coming to hang out on the stream. What's up, Corey? And what you'll be able to do as a content author is you'll be able to create like new levels that will be available like in this new like navigation computer interface where like the fog owl will actually like fly to a new location. And we intend that to be a place where you can create like story-based content. And we also have like a new take on what was previously like our mission computer, like our VR, training interface where you would load up a simulation of some kind, and then in sort of a Star Trek holodeck or like X-Men Danger Room style, like you'd have kind of an abstract environment where there would be, chests and laser barriers and whatnot. And sorry, it's kind of dragging on with the screen share going on. But you'd have like, hackable laser barriers and chests and stuff like that that you can put into an environment like this, like using the same like tile set and tools that we use to make make our core content. So like we use for Twilio Quest, we use Tiled, which is an open source like map editor that is used in indie game development a lot.
I think I've seen that before, like several years ago.
Oh, awesome. Well, yeah. So and this is kind of what we had done to create Twilio Quest content. So, we have this palette of objects that you can drag into the environment, and the objects are configured with properties like, is it hackable? Like, meaning, can you walk up to it and join it and like open up the hack interface? And in this case, there's also like an objective name, which is associated with it. And, we had like, there's a template repo that we have that, you can use to create one of these missions. And, an objective is what we call like one of those like coding challenges that you would encounter in the Twilio Quest game. And there's like a configuration file for it. And like, which says like, these are like the fields, the input fields that we ask the developer for. And then the secret sauce is this validator.js. And this is where you would write code that would determine like whether or not the player completed an objective. And you can, write whatever JavaScript you need to write to validate that happened. So anyway, I could go on and on, but the idea is that much like Minecraft mods, there's a folder on your computer where you can put, extensions in. It could be one extension or many. And in those folders, which are at the end of the day, like special node modules, with a package.json and what have you, you can create new content or override existing content. So if you wanted to like create your own version of the Twilio Quest JavaScript mission, you could kind of override all of the maps and dialogue and all the rest of the stuff too. So yeah. That is maybe more information than you're looking for. But that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, I love that it's like accessible to people to be able to contribute to it and kind of do their own thing. That's really cool.
Yeah, we hope so. It's we hope it's just like to lower the barrier of entry enough where if you want to create an experience in this like RPG framework we've made, hopefully we'll make it reasonably easy to do so. So.
Yeah, I think it's really neat where, anyone can make a mission on any kind of topic to help educate others, even if it's as simple as just teaching people what open source is, open source software, and having a little learning mission on explaining that and in a gamified way. Doesn't get better than that with learning.
I would love to see you crack open the authoring tools and talk about where that's at and where that's going, because I'm super excited about that new development.
Yeah, I am as well. Yeah, we've actually been working quite feverishly on kind of open sourcing and extracting from the game itself the same content authoring tools that we have, or that we use, so that anybody can make content for Twilio Quest. So if you want to start to play around with those tools, the way that you do that is in the launcher where it says current version, you can click on more. And under the 3.2 preview, that's kind of where these tools are coming from. The 3.2 release of the game is kind of our big ongoing development effort, and we hope to kind of release it as a generally available product at our Signal Developer Conference in October. But in the meantime, you can check out the current work in progress and see how it's looking, and also get your hands on the content authoring tools by using one of these preview release versions. When you do fire up this new version of the game client, you'll notice that you are aboard a spiffier looking fog owl. And in the final version of the game, what you'll be able to do is use this navigation interface to actually travel to different locations within the cloud. And you'll see some fun accompanying animations to go to new environments that way. And that's where you'll kind of play through some of the more story-based content that we have planned for this new version of the game. And this will actually look a little bit different in the final version of the game too. But over on the right-hand side of the ship, where we usually had those little pods where you loaded up the training mission, there will be this like little VR simulation that will have like sort of bite-sized training missions that might not have a full story associated with them, but will still teach a technical concept of some kind. And if you decide to develop your own content for Twilio Quest, you can create content such that it'll show up in either place. You can create a new destination that you can fly the Fog Owl to, and you can build an environment that looks like that. Or you can create one of these like VR training missions, which is a little more bite-sized. But yes, before you can do any of that, though, you do have to go into your settings and into extensions, and you would need to enable extensions. So this is what it will look like initially with extensions disabled. When you click the button to enable extensions, you'll specify a directory on your computer where you'll put these extensions. And like Margaret said, it is kind of like Minecraft in the sense that there's a folder sitting on your computer somewhere, and then you would have one or many extensions in this folder, and they would provide new content for the game. So I'm actually going to create a new one. All right, so we've chosen this new directory, and this is the place where all of our extensions are going to live. And the first thing that you would do as an extension author is you would use that link that Margaret put into the chat and grab the extension template repository. This template you'll be able to sort of clone a brand new version of. With the extension template repo, there is a little bit of getting started information about how you would enable extensions. So it kind of goes through the steps that I just went through. There isn't a tremendous amount there in terms of documentation yet. Our big thrust right now has been kind of getting these authoring tools up to parity with all of the stuff that we can do with the current version of the game client, which is like having NPC conversations and those types of things. So there's a few features still missing, after which we intend to push on the documentation pretty hard. But this template extension should actually have examples of the most recent features that we've added to the authoring tools. So so we've got that, and I'm actually going to use my terminal here to go to that extensions folder that I created before, which is going to be at TQEXT2, I believe is what I called it. And right now there's nothing there. ls-a. Turns out that doesn't exist on Windows. So you can see what elite Windows hacker I am. I think it actually does that by default a lot of the time. But so there's nothing there right now. But when I reload the current version of the game, the current version of the preview, I would say, that's actually going to change. So what the game is going to do is actually copy over a bunch of supporting files for extension development. So as I load up the game, with the current version, as you can see, like this is already quite a bit different. Like we're kind of going for like a holodeck X-Men Danger Room type of vibe for this like training area aboard the Fog Owl. But as I load up this new version, that actually copies over a bunch of files to this extensions folder. So if I do another ls, we can see there's now this bundled folder, which generally speaking, you're not going to have to deal with or think about. Like this is actually generated by TuliaQuest, and it has some assets in it for like the map editor that we use, and a few other bits and bobs. So that does get created there. You don't have to worry about it or touch it necessarily. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my extension project. And the way that generally we expect folks to go about doing that is to create, well, in this case, I can just clone it. I'll just clone the repository. But this is also a template repository, which on GitHub means that you can create your own version of it with a fresh commit history, like without all the crap that had been done to it by like the TuliaQuest team. So generally speaking, that's how you would interact with this code. But in this case, I'll just clone the extension template itself. And that's going to pull down all of the code from that repository. And now if I list this out, we have the TuliaQuest extension template along with the bundled code. And if you were to have multiple extensions installed, there would be multiple folders in this directory. So if you were to install a Cloudinary, for instance, extension in here, there would be, another folder for that as well. So let's go ahead and hop into that folder. And in this folder, if you happen to be a JavaScript developer, you might notice a few familiar artifacts right away, because a TuliaQuest extension is just a fancy Node.js module. It has a package.json to configure dependencies. We're also going to be using other package.json conventions from the Node.js universe by like specifying engines. So you can specify what version of TuliaQuest your extension works with, those types of things. And you could also use, probably most importantly, third-party code from NPM. So if your module requires some kind of NPM package of the hundreds of thousands that happen to be out there, you can just install those through the NPM package manager. In the extension demo, in the template application, there are a few of those third-party dependencies that we include basically just for demonstration. So the first step after cloning the repository is to npm install the dependencies for the extension. So if you want to do that and use these tools generally, you would probably also have to install. Most of the time, you'd have to install Node and npm as well. And for all platforms, there's a click-through installer for you to be able to do that if you don't have Node installed already. So with this all set up, I believe, I think I actually do need to refresh the game here. So to show how to do that, I'll point out another feature that exists in TuliaQuest today, but you might not have noticed, which is in the help menu, there's this option to toggle developer tools. And that actually brings up the Chrome console because TuliaQuest itself is a Electron application. So all of the stuff that you see in the game is just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The reason I kind of popped into the console here, number one, like I will probably want to have this console open while developing an extension, because oftentimes like I'll be writing a little bit of JavaScript code, and when I log things to the console, like I will be able to see them here. Eventually, like I will also be able to, use the debugger to take a look at, and set breakpoints in my code and kind of see how those things work. So having this open is usually just how you will interact with, a lot of the development experience while creating an extension. But it also allows you, while you have the web inspector or the Chrome developer tools here open, you can hit Control R, and that will trigger like a page reload, which is what is happening when you see this loading screen. It is a fancy web page loading up, getting all the JavaScript and CSS going to make the game happen. And after I do that, that is the point at which I will see my new mission show up over here in the mission computer. The way Twilio Quest works right now, which is probably not completely optimal, is we load in like the list of missions initially, like once when you load the game, which in a production scenario makes a lot of sense, but for development, we should probably do a little something different there. So now we have the VR mission template. If I load that up, I'm going to find myself in kind of this abstract environment that shows, a couple of the different things that you can add to the game world. It also shows like how you can create maps with some depth. So you can see I'm kind of walking behind these geometric shapes that are popping out of the ground, because that's what happens in virtual environments. Obviously, there's just random shapes that appear on the ground. And then there are going to be some familiar objects from Twilio Quest that you've probably seen before, like with the chest object, which brings up the hacking interface. And we also have an example of how to create sort of the canonical Twilio Quest laser barrier. As you're kind of looking at planning content too, there's kind of a reason why we have chests and barriers as the two primary blockers or like obstacles within Twilio Quest. The chest is generally used for like optional content. If there's a technical concept that you introduce and there's some enrichment content that you want to have associated with it, the chest is a good way to introduce those those items in a way that doesn't block progress. So, if you'd like to go deeper on any particular topic when you're creating content, a chest is a great way to do that. Whereas if there's a prerequisite, if there's something that the user absolutely cannot keep going until they master this concept, or there's like a prerequisite like you have to have a PHP runtime installed. Having a barrier for those types of challenges is typically the way that you would approach that. So in the newest version of the authoring tools, we have a way of kind of tying objects together to add behavior to them, so we can have actions taken in one context or with one object affect another. So the example that's going to be in the template is we have this little terminal object which is connected to this laser barrier object, such that when I interact with this and I answer the questions, we have this hack interface that we brought up. We answer the questions as we are instructed. We click hack, and then some validation code is being executed and kind of taking its sweet time here, as it would seem. And after the success, and after we close the barrier, there's like an event that gets fired into the event scripting engine that we have for a level. And that event is intercepted by this like laser barrier object. And then it knows like, all right, this objective has been completed. And once the hack interface closes, I am going to play that swooshy animation to make the lasers go away. So this is in the most recent version of the preview game client and of the extension template. So you can see examples of how all these things work. And the chest is very similar when you go in and answer the questions and come out again. The chest actually doesn't have as dramatic an opening animation. We should probably work on that. Like my favorite part of Zelda is when Link theatrically holds up an item of some kind. Might have to figure out how to make that work. But we have just an alternate sprite of the chest that we switch to. Anyway, like this is kind of what you get for free without writing any code. And this is like the starting point for creating your own content. James, are you a fan of TypeScript generally? Like, do you use it in the JavaScript projects that you work on?
I'm a fan in theory. I just don't have that much actual hands-on experience with it. I think I first took a stab at like setting up React like a year or maybe a little bit more than a year ago, and it slowed me down just because I wasn't used to it. And I think most people kind of have that same experience of like you type something out and it's like, no, you need to type, and it's like, okay, fine, I'll do a type, and then you start doing a lot of like any's, so you can just bypass, like technically you have a type for something, but you're just trying to like bypass it. But the more I've seen, and again, not much hands-on experience myself, but the more I've seen in other tutorials and projects, the more I really like it. And especially I just got through teaching a boot camp. There's still a little bit more left, but the focus was JavaScript front end, just kind of learning programming with JavaScript, and then Java back end, and getting back into like object-oriented programming, strong typing. It was like I started to appreciate that more, especially as things start to scale out. So I think this, especially being a bigger project already, having TypeScript really would help people that would dive in, because they know exactly what they're working with, what parameters to pass a function, what things to get back from a return from a function, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I think like depending on the APIs and like technologies you're interacting with too, like TypeScript can be more of an advantage. If I were to hazard a guess, and I don't actually know because I didn't talk to the video folks that built this application, is like the video API itself like just has a ton of like internal objects and internal APIs that you're working with. So just providing the hints about like, you know, now your text editor knows what all the properties of a local track is, you know, like that. Those end up being nice little shortcuts. So in this context, I think it does help quite a bit.
It's huge. Yeah. And especially with another, like a third-party API or SDK of some sort that you use, like having that IntelliSense just dot, and then, because that's how I program, is I'm like, I don't know what function I'm calling. Hit the dot, look at all the functions that I have that I can call. And they're usually pretty self-explanatory. And then especially when those have documentation around what parameters and return values and that sort of stuff, super useful. And I think if you're just in like the vanilla JavaScript world in VS Code, you've already, like, people out there you may not even know, but the documentation that you get, like that same sort of workflow, comes from VS Code having like typings behind the objects in vanilla JavaScript. And so you get that benefit without even being in the TypeScript world. And so then when you get into an SDK that doesn't give you that sort of help and assistance, it's really tough. It's a miss, honestly, because people want to have that feedback right there and not have to go and like search the docs for exactly what and how to work with the thing.
Yeah, it does seem like just kind of a strict best practice. If you were like publishing a node module that has an API that you want people to consume, like not having typings for it is kind of a bummer, which pains me to say, because I have been doing JavaScript long enough to like have gotten into old crusty habits of like before we had all these nice things.
Yeah.
But it is totally a best practice, and it helps for sure.
I guess, like, and this is my ignorance, but I'm really interested to know, but I guess you only get like static analysis type safety though, right? You don't get any runtime type safety from something like TypeScript because it can't infer the types. So is it like, I know it's not compile time, right? Because you don't compile JavaScript, but I guess you do now with modern like Webpack and stuff, right? So is it like
yes,
sort of
right?
Static analysis type safety where like, oh, you've set that to a Boolean blatantly there, and now you're trying to pass it into a place that's expecting a string. So it's not like a type safety system, right? It's just half a type safety system. I don't know where I'm going. Yes. I don't know where I'm going. I'm in a corner, okay? It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it, right? So like it is a static analysis step. So like because like TypeScript, well, I guess TypeScript actually does have a runtime component. Like when you compile TypeScript, there are some like, there's some like runtime bits that are necessary, like as the code, like if you use certain language features like that don't exist in vanilla JavaScript, like those things are kind of shimmed into the bundle that you create. But yeah, like I mean, honestly, I could be wrong. Like there might be some runtime stuff that is generated with the like containing code that TypeScript creates for you. I guess I'm not sure.
Go ahead, Gary.
No, go ahead, James. Go.
Yeah, I think my interpretation is the same. It's while you're doing your development, because I mean, like with vanilla JavaScript, you can do whatever you want, and there's almost no rules until you run it. And so the idea is that you catch those things before you run them or before you actually do your build. So I think it does come down to the static analysis, because the output of the build of the TypeScript is just JavaScript, because it has to be something that the browser understands. So yeah, I think it more is specifically what you said, just the static word, whatever you want to call it, but that sort of awareness. Yeah,
I guess. And I mean, as a PHP developer of 20 years, it's really weird for me to be saying this, but I've become completely spoiled by PHP's type system now, which is like extensive and useful. And like before I started at Twilio, when I was a consultant, adding types to legacy code caught so many bugs that had been in production since forever, like because they'd just been silently failing and converting types internally, which was like PHP's amazing, like, I guess like JavaScript, right? Low barrier to entry, but big potential for bugs, because we'll coerce anything into anything and who cares? So yeah, I think, but honestly, just knowing what types are expected in a public API, method is massively valuable. Like that's such a big win immediately. I agree.
Yeah, and that's why you see so many things, even if the SDK is not written in TypeScript, they have just the typings themselves, so you can still get that IntelliSense and help inside of VS Code, and VS Code can then do some of the, still again working in like JavaScript land, VS Code can still give you some of those benefits of if you were using TypeScript. Yeah, it's really, really neat. It's kind of funny. I mean, like, I feel like JavaScript's thing for so long was just being really proud of that. Like, I came from a Java and .NET background, and then was scared to jump into JavaScript, because I was like, there's no bumper lanes like at all. There's no structure. There's no containment. And I was scared of that. But I think that's what, for so long, people just really love that, I guess, like the freeness of it. And it's interesting to see how much TypeScript has been adopted. And even I feel like every day I see like a new person, oh, now I love TypeScript and I'm on the bandwagon, right? It's kind of cool to see that progression.
In the current version of Twilio Quest, like one of the fancier missions we have is the JavaScript mission, where there's lots of scripting and like events that happen as a result of stuff happening in the game. And that code is pretty procedural today, because the way that we wrote it, we use this events.js interface. So this is something that you can specify for a level, and you can essentially create a function that's going to be invoked anytime some kind of lifecycle event happens for the level, like every time somebody enters the level for the first time, or every time somebody completes an objective, like this function gets fired off with the event data and this world object, and the world object kind of has the like interface through which you can like make things happen in the game world, where you can create or destroy objects, you can initiate conversations. There's a variety of things you can do with this object. And we did all the scripting sort of imperatively through this event hook, but with this object scripting interface, it allowed us to modularize that quite a bit. So like the terminal gets to own its own behavior, and the lasers own its own behavior. And as you drag like, a million of them into the level from tiled, you don't have to write additional code to power those things. So we're hopeful that will be a useful thing.
One thing I wasn't meant to ask was, do you know on the Flame open source, where you're walking around and then you're going from like one map section to another map section? Are you able to do that in the current authoring tools?
Yeah, so you'll actually see that on the objects layer, there's like a rectangle object tool that lets you like draw rectangular regions as objects. And they're hard to see, but there are actually a couple of them in there right now. So there's this tiny little exit like rectangular object. and that is of type level change. You can kind of see over here on the left. And then the properties of that are the level name and the player entry point. And this is how you kind of set up those transitions. So each of these little rectangles are set up to go to the Fog Owl level and the player entry point named this. So actually, like in the VR mission itself, like there's this player entry 1, which is again of type player. And that's like a special object that specifies like where the operator is going to show up when they spawn into the room. So you're actually specifying which of these entry points you're sending the player to. So you can kind of see them in the default project, and you can sort of copy paste this. And for a level, levels have a default map name. So like default.json is the name of the map. And this looks gross here, but this JSON file is what you open up in Tiled to actually see the map. So if you don't specify a map name, then it just goes to the default. But if you want to use a different map, then you can add another custom property called, I think it's like map name or something like that. I'd have to double check. But then you could specify a different map as well. What might be kind of fun at this point is maybe we explore the game and see if we can find some of those trees. Does that seem like a decent plan?
That sounds awesome. So every individual player has 12 trees that they can find and plant, right?
Indeed, there is. So we found sort of the gimme one aboard the Fog Owl to kind of let folks know how this mechanic works. But if we go into one of our training missions here, let's select the basic training mission. Those like tree planting stations are kind of scattered all across the game for the most part. I think they are largely concentrated in these first 6 missions that you see here. I believe that's where we have hidden most of the trees. So let's go to the basic training mission first. And I've actually started a brand new game. So Cedric might be a little chattier with me than he would be with you. But as you're going through the basic training mission, this kind of like gets you familiar with how Twilio Quest works, the hack interface, and those types of things. And it just will ask you to enter the secret code here, which is level up. And in most of the challenges in Twilio Quest, we ask you a question of some kind, or we collect some kind of input, and we validate that with some kind of logic behind the scenes to figure out if you've done it correctly. And in this case, we're just checking to see if you found that code. And we can see already over here on the left, there's a suspicious tree planting area. So I'm going to try to make a beeline for that. Whenever you plant a tree, like I just did moments ago, I found the second tree planting apparatus. There's actually a link that shows up to this sort of the heads up display here that kind of shows how many trees people have planted in the challenge. And I feel like we have a strong chance of eclipsing 4,000 today. I think I feel pretty confident in making that call. So if you haven't already, definitely get on top of it and start playing Twilio Quest and finding those trees.
Our goal for the month of April is to plant more than 10,000 trees. And this does run throughout the month of April. So we're trying to get a big push today. But if you don't manage to get the time together today, you can still do this throughout the rest of the month of April and help us turn those pixel trees into real world trees.
Indeed, up to 10,000 of them. I think we're going to get there. We've done it in the past. I think we can do it again.
So have you all found all 12 of your trees? Have all of you found all 12 trees? You have not? Okay.
There is one that's really tricky to find, I think.
All right, Chris, you need to queue up Twilio Quest, because I've just nominated you as our next Twilio Quest player. So you can go find us some trees. Amazing.
I found a tree.
You found a tree. You planted a tree. Good job. Now you've just got 11 more. That, of course, is basically the demo tree. Just as an example, it's very easy to find as soon as you pop in. So no excuses, anybody who's watching at home. But there is a super, super easy tree to plant. You just pop in the game, and it's right there. And then it turns into a real world tree through our partnership with One Tree Planet. So no excuse. Plant a tree today.
I'm guessing I have to actually go through some of these modules to get a tree.
Yes, they are hidden like cookies, little cookies for you to find.
Two trees.
Yay! Good job. 10 left. So I went to university in British Columbia in Canada, which is more British than the US. And they have tea times, and I did not do any of the tea times because I was a poor college student, and that was part of the fancy touristy things. But I did become aware of the distinction between regular tea and high tea, and my understanding is they both have snackies, but high tea also has champagne, which seems like a weird addition to tea time and snackies, but apparently that's a thing.
Well, according to Lord of the Rings, isn't tea time just another meal? It's another excuse for a meal. So, of course, champagne.
Sure, why not? I'm mostly there for the snackies. Like I love the concept of tea time because my understanding of that is purely fantasy based. I've never actually experienced it. So in my mind, it's just an excuse to have like a cascading tower of snacky treats.
I do love a good snack. I'm running out of snacks in this office. I need to put in an order. Snacky
treats are the best. I actually, because I am an adult and get to do what I want, I have an entire cabinet in my kitchen that's nothing but snacks.
I mean, so this office is actually outside my house, so I have to specifically buy things for here. And I have a few things like that I find at Costco usually, like peanut butter pretzels, very good. But that's about it right now. So I need a few more things. Oh, and I'm having some awful drink for breakfast.
That does look like an awful drink. Look, Luce has brought us a tree counter. Yay! Thank you, Luce. So it looks like
don't thank me. It was just an overlay from last year. It still works. So
Brent will be so delighted. So it looks like 3,180 trees planted.
That's amazing. Let me load Twilio Quest and let me
add to that count.
Trees too.
Very exciting.
One of the things that I like about Twilio is, we have a lot of good code resources, but then increasingly we also have resources for people where it's like, I'm not sure what is code for this context. Right. We have all of these templates under Quick Deploy. Have you played with this? Have you played with the Quick Deploy templates?
Yeah. I wrote one that we ended up having to pull back, but it's super fun.
Should we do which one should we do?
Well, maybe we could talk about an idea.
An idea. Okay, so we have many options. Let's pretend. I'm going to pretend that I don't know how to do anything, which is actually not that much of a stretch. And so I'm going to look at these templates and think like, okay, all right, what do I want to do that might help the earth? And then also, are there any of these templates that might be a good fit for that?
What about another one where we gather ideas? How about like somebody calls in and says, this is my idea on how to make it better. And then we share, you can also share that idea, right? Because you call in, it's like an idea hotline. You get delivered that, somebody on the other side listens to it. That's something we could do too.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like the idea that you could have, and I also am curious about, in general, how to connect people. Because one of the other things that, one of the things that Twilio does really well, and one of the things that I feel like Chad has also touched on is like, you are like being able to connect with people and get people to join you and rally people locally and find people with the similar interests is really important. And so are there things we could do that would facilitate that?
Right. Yeah, let's I think the structure of building a place to share your idea and hear that other people have those ideas and maybe just be inspiring. Because that, I don't know, you're for this coding challenge with that might do something. I mean, it would definitely could rack up some bills too, right? So like were it to take off, that's something we could do. So we could, and I think we could pretty quickly write that. I think we could write like you call in and you say, what's your idea to make the earth healthier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how then we would so what we'd need an input from Twilio Voice, and we would need to be able to record what people said. Preferably, like the ideal would be that it just comes in as text, like whatever they say gets delivered as text. But what do you think? How feasible is that for a prototype?
Yeah, so definitely there's a record verb that we can use, and that record verb has a very nice attribute that says transcribe equals true, and it has a callback that sends out, and in that callback we could catch it and send a text message from that. We could do that.
Is this something that? So another question: is this something that we can start with any of the quick deploy templates, or do we want to start?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. Let's see. Is there a voicemail on here? Because I think this is a voicemail application.
Voicemail. You know, I have never made a voicemail application. I was like kind of not aware that was a thing. Oh, here it's voice auto response.
That says hello world.
Yeah. A simple sample code that responds with hello world to incoming calls. Probably need another step from there.
Yeah, we could, we could also put an IVR in front of it. We could say press 1 to leave your message and 2 to hear them. Oh, call forwarding with voicemail.
Oh.
And it's quick deploy.
Oh, here you go. So if I click on this.
That's good.
And I'm going to have all of this all right, so this will show you how to build a call forwarding app that forwards calls, thank you, during a specific time window and records voicemails if calls are unanswered or outside of that time window. Okay, so I have some Twilio numbers and stuff here. I have a bunch of random ones. I don't know which one this is.
I would like to point out that you have a nom-bot and an om-bot.
I do, because you see nom-bot, nom and om were the names of these two Roombas that we used for Signal.
Oh, right.
And so, because they were identical Roombas, so one was named nom and the other was named om, which actually caused less of a problem than you would think for variable naming, because then starting with different names, despite starting with different letters, despite it ending the same way, was very helpful. Okay, I'm gonna take this window out for a second so that you cannot see, and I'm gonna put in my phone number, and then I'm gonna scroll down.
Okay, that's how you do it, huh?
Yeah, that's how I'm doing it right now.
Right.
I don't know if that's how to do it. It's how we're doing it now. All right, so then we're gonna say deploy my application.
Cool. So what this is doing is it's taking, there's a serverless application that's sitting under here. We'll be able to edit the serverless application later. So it's taking it, it's pushing it up onto our runtime, and it's actually building endpoints that will be alive. It's probably wired up your phone number that you chose there.
Oh, so and live application.
And then we can go to live application. Yeah.
All right. So call your Twilio phone number. If the call occurs during the configured business hours, you should receive a forwarded call. Oh, okay. So you have to call my Twilio number so that my phone rings, and I don't remember which phone number that I gave it. So now I have to go find out.
It's that your configured Twilio number. Does it if you click that, does it do something?
Click here to see. Oh, okay. Hold on. I'm going to open this in a new window in case it is secret. All right, here we go. So I'm going to give this to the chat. I hope this isn't an important number I already had hooked up to something else.
Well, it's not hooked up anymore.
Yeah, I know, for real. Whatever used to be there is broken. I don't think this is in use or anything. So now if somebody calls that, then I think it'll get forwarded to my phone. Hypothetically. Are you going to call it?
Yeah.
So that's kind of nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Something's totally coming in. Answer.
Hello. Hey.
Oh my God.
What are you doing? I'm on a stream.
That's cool. I am also on a stream.
Oh, I gotta go. This is weird.
Yeah. You better go. Okay, wait. What if I let that go to voicemail? What happens?
Okay. If the call occurs,
then save in my voicemail?
So if the call occurs during the configured business hours, you'll receive a forward call. If it's outside of the hours, you'll get a voicemail.
Oh, okay. So now I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to change the hours for this.
We have to change the hours. Yeah.
Okay.
So go to edit this code. And
Hold on. I'm going to click edit this code with the window pulled out just in case it's like, let me show your entire phone number.
Right.
Not that it's like super secret, my phone number, but a lot of times what happens is they put the environment variable. Oh, this totally did it. Okay, let's look at this one just to make sure. Yeah. Awesome. All right. So here's what is so great about this for particularly live coding. So everything that is like all of these got stored. My phone number got stored as an environment variable under environment variables. And then under recording and voicemail, it just references it as the environment variable. Cool. So we can change this to be like, there's no start and end. What happens if we set everything to 0?
Let's take a look at the environment variables. I think typically the way these work is you can set your working hours, right?
So you can set it right here. It gets set in a constant or voicemail, it looks like.
Oh, it's not inside the Jammy.
I didn't think
it's not inside environment variables.
It's a const down here because it says const.
Oh, yeah. I see. Okay. Yeah. Yep. All right.
Well, that's the default. I think probably you might be right that it goes in. Let's look. Yeah, work hour end.
Yeah, so
we can change it. Work start. So those are the default. So we can change it here.
Work at 9 to 9, right? 9 a.m. to 9 a.m. Something like that.
Work hour end is currently 18. Work hour start is currently 8. And then 8 to 8.
Working 8 to 8. All right, so go ahead and.
Well, do you think it'll?
Let's make it 9. Let's make it 9 just in case. Right?
What about 8.5? Maybe it has to be an integer.
Yeah, I've kept it an integer. I think you're right.
Work week start. Work hour start. Hold on. Oh, did I mess it up? No, that's fine. Where's the work week end? Here, work weekend.
Oh, so that's Monday.
1 to 2. We're just looking at Monday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. I really don't hold on. Maybe we'll do 9 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Does that make you feel better?
It would make you feel better. Yeah, work hours start 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. That's like a really light work week right there.
Yeah. That's like, I feel like they used to write blog posts about that all the time. Right? 4-hour work week. You just did your 4-hour
work week.
On
Hacker News. We should have a 4-hour work week.
And then just forward all your calls to voicemail.
I love live blogs. Okay.
So it's deploying. It has been deployed. I'm going to give that number a call again, and it's going to go to voicemail.
You say this is really exciting.
I believe it's going to do that. So let me do that again. Let's put this on speaker just in case we figure out what's happening.
Hi there. You are calling after my work hours. Please leave a message.
Just like you. Hey, Christine, I know that you only work 8 to 10 on Mondays, and this is like after that, but we got some of the code you wrote's not working, and I was just wondering, I don't think it can wait until next week. I hope this message reaches you. All right. That was a little hard, but probably realistic in this situation.
Let's see if oh, wait, I have a text. You have a new, and it says you have a new message from your Twilio voicemail. And then it has a recording. So it forwards me to a .wav recording. So it doesn't transliterate it.
Doesn't do the okay.
But now I have a recording of you saying this.
So
I feel like, wait, but I didn't know that what we could do was take recordings of people doing. So now I feel like what we should do is we should have we have this amazing opportunity to just take recordings of people saying things.
Yeah.
And this isn't very environmental necessarily, but I really just want to have a bunch of recordings of people saying whale sounds. If we have a whale impersonation hotline, what will happen?
I built a thing with my daughter. We were talking about I was trying to tell her about machine learning, and she's like, oh, so it's like teaching robots. And I was like, I guess you're right. And she's like, well, what do you need to teach a robot? And I'm like, well, robots don't know how to behave. Think about it. Robot, you have to teach them everything. And she's like, do they know how to fart? And I was like, That's an interesting question, and of course, relevant for a 9-year-old to be wondering. So we wrote a fart bot. So what we tried to do is we're going to produce a machine learning thing where people called in and made the noise, and then we just kind of played it back. And it was just a fun, silly thing of showing this off. But basically, yeah, you can have this like recording, this long list of recordings, and there's an API to get a hold of them, right? So you can say, show me all the recordings for this phone number. You can just play them all in order. Right, because we have the ability to play wave files on a call. So you call in and you just hear all of them, and it was really fun. And it's really funny to say, please record, make the best fart noise you can with your mouth. Try not to laugh. Was what the computer voice said as it went. So,
it is pretty risky to just have that open.
Yeah, for sure.
People
for sure.
Mischief.
Right.
But wait,
right.
How do we? So Brent is saying that we have recording and transcription. I haven't used our transcription tool.
Oh yeah.
Is there a way to just funnel this directly into?
Yeah. Check this out. So let's go see what it's doing. Let's open that function up. So what we're looking at here is the actual code that was deployed, right? So I believe it's probably going to come in under voicemail first. So this is probably the handler for it. So if we take a look at voicemail, so it's going to come in, it's going to get your phone number, going to get all the information. It does say have translated greeting. So
that's this one. So the translated greeting is.
Oh, gotcha.
So,
okay, that's.
I think that's
cool.
like in case you need to translate it into what it looks like. I think German, right? Yeah. So we have German and English.
Yeah.
And
so
if is working day and working hour, then forward. Otherwise, say the greeting in the translated language if you need to translate it.
Yep.
Otherwise, just regular, and then record this into the path.
So it's saying the action there. So there's an extra verb here, or an extra attribute called transcribe. So if you just do a comma after that action. Sorry. No. Yeah. After the. Yeah. There. Yep.
Comma. There's already a comma. It's even waiting.
Oh, it was already there. It was ready for you. So on the next line, transcribe equals true, or colon true, in an object literal world. There we go. Yep. Sweet.
I need to put this in brackets.
I think you're in it right now. So see the line 77 has the opening.
It doesn't need additional brackets.
Yeah.
Look, it even did a really nice. I recognized that was true. I recognize that you used an important word. Every time a code editor does syntax highlighting in this way, I think about when you talk to a dog and the dog only knows certain words and then it just pays extra attention when you say treat or sit or the dog's name. That's what I think. That's how I feel about code editors. It's just greetings.
So the way that this works now is so this is going to happen asynchronously. Obviously, you're going to hang up. It's going to make the recording, and then it's going to kick off a transcription process now. And that thing needs a URL to go. And I believe it's transcribe URL. Let me just make sure really quick because you're inside the record verb. And let's share
underscore or wait. Where are those docs?
I'll toss this.
Somebody in the chat named LRM Olyanuels was asking, where could one get or buy some Twilio Quest swag? I would really like to wear some at my engineering school.
Oh,
Greg, where does one get or buy Twilio Quest swag?
Yeah, so you can definitely get this. Attend to Superclass. And you can get some Twilio Quest swag. So we'll be doing one of those here in May pretty soon, and that will get you actually a newer version of this shirt with the cooler logo, with this logo. Let me show you this cool logo. Look at that. There it is. Yeah, that's kind of like more metal logo. That is a great way to do it. Maybe we can talk about some other way to get you some swag too, because I like that too. I like you wearing that at your engineering school. So you're going to give this a URL, and we could probably do very similar to what the action did there. We'll make a new function.
Callback is specified. There's no need to specify transcribing. It's true. It is implied.
It's implied. It's implied.
If you imply it without, then it will be stored for you to retrieve later. But Twilio will not asynchronously notify your application.
Yeah.
So I think is what we want the callback, or is what we want transcription URL?
No, what's going to happen is the callback's going to get this data here. This data is going to be pushed to you, and what you'll have is a transcription text. So we'll pop transcription callback in there and do that same URL resolve trick there.
Oh, so we're just going to do transcribe callback instead of
URL. We don't need to do that action. Right. No, just like action.
Oh,
do it just like action. Like basically copy paste that line.
Transcribe callback.
Yeah. And colon. Yep. And then URL resolve. Yeah. And then we're going to make a new
and recording.
Mm-hmm. And we'll make a new path. Yeah. We'll make a new path that does transcribe. Transcribed.
We still say recording here. What does this really do?
That's the path that it's going to go to. So, see, there's a function above voicemail on your browser there called recording. So that's going to pass. It says when the recording happens.
Recording.
Yeah. So here we're gonna pass. We'll make a new function, maybe transcribed, because this will happen after it's been transcribed. So we'll make a new function called transcribe. So just
like that,
awesome.
And then we're going to add here. Add a function.
Yep.
Hold on. Save first. First save, then add a function named /transcribe.
Wonderful.
Oh,
awesome. Oh, and it gave you some stuff.
Yeah, it's like I already started that for you, and I'm like, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah, right. So let's look at so we were gonna grab this. This is more what we want, right?
Yeah, I'm just gonna paste this in to start.
Yeah,
different
let's do it.
Start save.
Let's do it. Awesome. So I don't think we're going to need lines 5 or 6. That's going ahead and getting a hold of the call and getting the URL. But what we will want to do is we'll want to make that message, and that's in event.transcription text, capital T, capital T's on that. So
what? Wait, what? Okay. So currently what it's doing is it's saying it's just giving us the URL.
Right.
Where it's storing the recording. But what we want is to give us the actual text that is living at that URL.
Yeah, totally. So, and that's in event.transcription text. Because if you go back to that recording, the doc, the record doc, the documentation.
Oh, the documentation.
I'm sorry.
Bad.
So this request parameters, that's what's going to be sent to this function, and it will be in the event. So that's that transcription text there is what we want. So if you want to just copy that.
Oh.
There we go.
Okay, so then we got to pull that out from.
So it's on the event. So if you do event dot and then paste your transcription text, it will just write whatever it got. And it's usually pretty good. It's really surprising. I think like transcription these days has had to have gotten better because like you think of all the things that we're driving, like we're talking to our phones more, right? And making it do stuff. Yep, you got it. That's it.
Wow. That's going to be it. Okay.
Yep.
I got a new message for you.
Yeah. Awesome. And it's gonna, so line 8 there, client is the Twilio client. It's making a new message. It's sending it. So it's from the original .call. That's not what we're going to have, but we'll probably have event dot.
It's from the. I thought this is going to say it's from my Twilio phone number, right? Because that's the original.
Right. Yeah. So if you do, I think if you do event dot from, I think you'll get the right number here.
What we might want to say is I got a new message for you from, and then say event dot from. Is it capital F from or lower?
Yep. Capital F. Capital? Yeah, all the requests, stuff that comes through. Yep.
Then if I am like an org where this is my incoming stuff line, I actually want it to be organized in my voicemail where everything that comes in, it's like a suggestion or whatever, is underneath the same. Yeah.
Because you can now attach this to multiple numbers, right? So that's cool. So on line 9 there, let's do that too. because I think you don't have an original called up anymore, because that was the 2 lines I had you kill before. So let's do event.from there as well. Is event. Really? Yeah.
With a capital.
I'm pretty sure it's gonna be
with a capital and lowercase from.
So when we send to our callbacks, we use I don't know if the Studley caps is how I've heard that style used, where it's uppercase and the next one's uppercase. I don't know why it's like that, or why it's that, or the probably gross etymology of whatever that term is.
But so this is so this is still going to come to me as a text from my Twilio number.
From your Twilio number,
but with metadata that it's coming from from your number.
And you might have an environment variable here if that says what your Twilio number is. I would imagine it does. Yeah. So let's use that. We could use that. So that's off the context. So context gives you access to all of the
Is it my?
It was Twilio under phone under number, I believe.
Yeah, you're correct.
So that gives you access to all those environment variables whenever you need them. All right, save.
Is it gonna work?
So I think you're going to get 2 texts, because we didn't stop the voicemail from happening. So you're going to get the voicemail, and then shortly after that, you're going to get a transcription.
Oh, that's true. Did we not stop the voicemail from happening?
We did it. I think it's fine. I think it's fine, because maybe you want to listen to it if the transcription's bad, right?
Oh, maybe. Yeah, that's true. You're right.
So
stop it. Yeah, because you're right. We have both recording and transcribe. That's smart, though. You're totally right. We need both. Okay.
All right. So here's.
Hi there. You were calling after my work hours.
That sounds so much.
I thought I was gonna have it change what it said. Did I? Oh no.
Hey, Christine. Again, about the work hours, I didn't get a call back from you. I know that you're not working, and I don't know what you're doing. I think you're counting bugs in the backyard. That's
Animal Crossing in real life.
Science project, you and Animal Crossing. All right, so I giggled a bit in there, and I probably talked a little rapidly. So let's see what the transcription looks like. It'll be good. I'm sure it'll be good. All right, here it comes. All right.
I'm going to change that incoming message. I don't like it. I'm going to change it to please leave a special. Can we change what voice it is? How do I find a list of all of the voices that we have?
If you want Cedric, it's Brian. Polly.Brian and Ian.
Okay, so I
UK.
got, by the way, I did get the text that is.
I got
the text that is the recording. You have a new message from Twilio voicemail with the recording, but I haven't gotten the text that is. I haven't gotten the transcription. Oh, here it is. Here it is.
Please read it out loud.
And it says, "Seeing again about the work I didn't. Do I know that you know we're going? And I don't know. I think you're counting bugs in the backyard. So I get over there, and there I probably will rapidly because I'm sure."
So good thing you have the recording to hear exactly what happened.
Wait. Okay, can we combine them? Can we combine them so that you get one text where it's like, here's the transcription, and then the recording is linked to it?
Yeah. I think that's probably, well, I mean, like if you think about it, you're probably going to get two text messages anyway, because it's going to go over the limit of where it is, and that URL's long. That URL's long too.
Yeah. Okay, so we should probably leave it.
Yeah, but this is a good. I think, Christine. I think we did a really interesting approach of we're close to this, right? Like we want to say, like, come and leave your idea here on how to make the world a better place, if that's what we're going to do. And we don't need all the extra stuff here, but this gets us started and along the way of what we were going to try to build. And it's close. And all you did originally was press a button, which is awesome.
It's true.
It's super neat.
It all starts with a button press.
It all starts with a button press.
What's your favorite idea? And then we just let people read it.
And let's make Cedric do it. Let's put that as Polly Bryan. And of course, you could make this more. You could, like Cover Beardy says, after hours you get a Rickroll if you call it. Absolutely possible. So you can
record hours that do different things.
Right. Run special features at certain times. I think what's neat about this is you could also record your own voice at the front here. So instead of this welcome thing, we could play a wave file of being more, whatever it is. But basically, we're using this as an input and an output device. So now we've used the phone microphone as an input device. It's pretty powerful, and the transcriptions can get a lot better as well. There are better ways to make the transcriptions go. We can do this in real time too. All right, we have Cedric saying what.
Really pleased that this works.
So
that was so fast.
Let's hear Cedric say. What's
your favorite idea?
My favorite idea is to do. I saw in the chat earlier we were talking about planting and keeping a little garden in your yard is a good way to do that. Don't cover it up. Keep a little garden going. Let the bees come. That's a great idea. Here it comes.
Let's see. Okay, got a new message. So it's interesting because that as soon as you hung up, it sent me the message. So it saves the WAV really fast.
Yeah.
Or at least generates the URL where the WAV is going to live really fast.
Yeah.
And then we will get to see the delay live for
Right.
Oh, there it is. Now it just came in. Well, in the chat earlier, we were talking about planting and keeping a little girl is a good way to do that. Don't ever know people. Little can come of the beast. That's a great idea.
It could be a little confusing. I'm glad we left the wave file on there to listen to. So that's super fun.
This is really entertaining.
Yeah.
I would love to see you crack open the authoring tools and talk about where that's at and where that's going, because I'm super excited about that new development.
Yeah, I am as well. I'm actually going to create a new one. This is where we see my awkward Windows usage generally. I don't usually develop on Windows, so most of the time, I'd already have that folder. So let's call it TQ-ext2.
For anybody that is tuned in but has not yet checked it out, just so you know, you can develop for and play Twilio Quest on Windows or on Mac or on Linux, which is delightful.
Indeed. Can definitely use any of those operating systems. We've also tested the authoring tools across those 3 platforms as well. So you should be able to create content on any platform that you like.
As somebody who was exclusively a Linux user for many, many, many years, I am very, very appreciative of the multi-operating system availability.
Yeah, there was kind of a time there in the development world where developer tools were only being developed for the Mac. So I'm glad that has started to diversify a little bit. Now we have, in the crusty olden days when I was just kind of getting started, TextMate was the new hot thing, but that only worked on Mac and what have you. But nice to be able to have those options. Yeah, what would be an interesting authoring task to take on? Was there something in your authoring process that was weird or not clear, or trying to think through well, how would I do that? That sort of thing.
So one thing I'm trying to do is I've been working on a document right now of what is the best way to plan out a Twilio Quest extension without even starting on the files. So I kind of put together a document with a table and kind of broke down how many emissions do I how do I know how many emissions do I want? How do I start? Do I start with the story, or do I start with what kind of questions I'm going to ask? And it's kind of hard to determine which route to take first and start planning before going the other way for just a whole mission set. So there's just a lot of thinking behind it that I've been kind of putting a little bit time here and there each day, just planning.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the best place to start. So when we plan out content, and I think we actually even might have chatted about this briefly, but we usually start from like the learning objectives and think through like, all right, what are the things that we feel like
opening up a
should...
notepad.
Yeah.
Start with learning objectives.
Yeah. And sometimes like it also helps to have like an existing body of content to use as sort of like the textbook for the content that you're making in TulioQuest. Because one thing we've learned like through various iterations of the game is that people don't really consume written content in TulioQuest. Like what they really want to do is try to hack and like write code and do the thing to get past the objective. So like we used to spend like lots of time creating giant tutorials that we would show in the game, but nobody ever read them. Nobody cared that they were there. So what we found actually worked a little better is we would find like an authoritative source of some kind and say like, all right, we're going to create an objective where we want you to figure out how to iterate over an array in JavaScript. And here's a really great tutorial on the web on how to do that. Like this will show you how to do that thing.
This is exactly what developer experience is like. Like why write 15 pages of content on getting started with your product when they just skip all the content and they're just looking for how to do it real quick? Where's the code sample that I can just copy and paste? Where's a a demo on a sandbox that I can fork immediately? They want to see something. They just want to go straight to the point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we've definitely seen that maybe even more so than we've seen in like our documentation in TulioQuest, that people is, yes, why aren't you like Stack Overflow, as Brent points out. But like, yeah, like we've definitely seen that in TulioQuest. And we like the way that we see people consuming content is kind of as a last resort. Like when we've done our user testing with TulioQuest, it's only after people have exhausted all other options that they actually read the words that are in the objective. So like if you rely on the markdown files to convey important information, oftentimes that's going to be skipped, and like they'll kind of scan over it and like be like, oh, okay, I kind of get it, and then just try a solution. So a pro tip from, yeah, please go ahead.
Sorry. I'm thinking of maybe it should be, the description should be, or the objective should be more like Reddit style. There's the long version, and then there's a TLDR or whatever. I never use that acronym. The short version. So it can go straight to the point for first, and then it can do the story like underneath it. So that way they can choose not to read the story and just read like the first paragraph that gets to what they need to do immediately. So that kind of gives me a different thinking of how to construct this next.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you'll, I think like our most recent thinking about objective authoring is probably represented in the JavaScript mission in TulioQuest. And what you'll notice there is that all the objectives have like a to-do list, like that's kind of floated right in the content. And it's and we try to, in the fewest amount of words humanly possible, to say like, create a file called this, make it do this, then click hack. And like, because like that is the thing that we have detected that people actually will kind of read. They'll be like, okay, make that file, make it do this. And then like, that's the thing that we can be reasonably confident that they will read, because they have to kind of know what the objective is asking. But the other place where you do have an opportunity to like convey content to the user is like, here, I'm going to put my screen on there just real quick to show this particular bit. But in the objectives, like in your validator code, when you like fail one of the potential tests of the objective, this text gets shown in the box. So like here, if I actually quit out of the game.
It's kind of like a extra tip, but based on what they submit. Okay, here's an extra tip of what the what the answer is, because they're most likely not going to click on the help or the tip page and read all that content. They're like, I just want to know immediately if I'm right or wrong, and what do I need to do next.
Yep. Like, so what we discovered like really belatedly is how important these like failure messages are, because this is like what the user will actually read. Like, they're going to kind of skim the objective and figure out like, yeah, okay, like I know what I'm supposed to do, try something, and then sometimes it works right away and everybody's happy. But if it doesn't work right away, like, this is the text that they will actually read. Like, they will actually like carefully parse these error messages. So we discovered that this was actually the most important content to write well, which is like these error messages and these bits of feedback, because this is what people actually read. So
that's good to know. I'm making that a priority in the next big project.
Like, creating the learning objectives and figuring out what you're going to teach and in what order is probably, like, at least for us, like the hardest part of content authoring. Like the maps and like doing the visual stuff and the scripting, like is hard, but not nearly as hard as figuring out like what is useful to teach. So like starting off like from some kind of like authoritative text is pretty useful. Like, if we had it to do over again, like for the JavaScript intro course, like we probably would have just like created a Twilio Quest mission that very closely mirrored some like popular JavaScript tutorial.
For some reason, it just popped into my head because I was thinking of the old little mud adventures you got when computers first started like having games on it, and you do a tiny little room and you do something in that room, and then you'd move to another tiny little room and do things in there. And I think it'd be quite fun to sort of do a little mud adventure through mission level sort of thing.
I'm a huge fan of mud, just in general. Like, you say the word mud, and I'm just like, ooh, are you making a new mud? Yes, please. So yes.
Well, that's what popped into my head because because that popped into my head, and then I think it's because I remember you saying about the mud game that you created and that. So yeah.
Yep.
I think that'd be really quite a cool way of doing it, instead of just having one big map that they walk around. Is sort of, I'm starting to show my age, like remembering back like things like Lord of the Rings, where you had to like try and like look in the room, find key, open door. Why aren't you opening the door? Open the door. Open the door. No.
I think one of the reasons that I continue to be obsessed with MUDs, even though there really haven't been any new ones in like 20 years or something,
I know.
is because MUDs were all almost entirely text-based, and not, and therefore not beholden to hardware development for the kind of content they could provide. Because obviously, I don't know how obvious this is to people that aren't kind of obsessed with game development, but like the reason that the hardware advances with game development advances is because of graphics. It's not because of storyline. It's not because of mechanics. It's because of the graphics. And since MUDs were never that kind of game, it tended to just end up being way bigger and more epic, with more stuff you could do and more storyline. And as much as graphics are cool, those are the bits that actually tickle my brain the best, and the obsession remains, even though people have not been making games like that in a million years. And I that's why I love these low graphics demands kind of approaches to game development, is because if you let go of the one thing being the center of your universe, then you can add in so much cool of the other stuff.
The thing is, well, with a lot of the graphics of games nowadays, is that you can't really make the character your own because there's so much that goes into the graphics of making things that you have to use like the predefined stuff. You know, I still used to remember like playing like role we got pencil and dice games with the role playing, and you had to imagine the character in your head. But these days you don't imagine it, you just sort of see it. And I know, as much as I was back in them days, it was, oh yeah, I'd love to be able to see my character. These days, you can see a character, but it's not quite right there.
I absolutely find I do see the value in like cinematic games where you're basically just playing a character in a movie. that's cool. I just don't think it's the only cool kind of game. And yes, I'm and actually there is that dichotomy in the tabletop role-playing experience. Like I love a good game where the DM shows up and they've got a story planned out and they've got a set static variety of characters and they're like, pick one. It's one of these. These are the characters that we're running today. That can be fun. Yeah. It's a very different experience from the whole you create your character from scratch and you sort of like conspire with the other players to develop this whole game.
Yeah.
It's just a very different thing. And it's not that, and I just would like us to not have to pick one or the other. I would like games of both varieties, please.
Yeah. But like I say, when I was going, you used to watch things like Star Wars, and when they're on the Millennium Falcon and they got that like chess type game, the circular game, and like the holographic things moving about. That was the sort of time when he was sort of like, oh, I'd love to see it. Oh, I just imagine if you could lay your entire experience out in front of you and walk around it. But now I know a lot of people who sort of like growing up in that sort of era. Now it's all here. They're like, well, I'd really like to go back and not be able to like think about it myself and get in my own little world. And this is, as you know, I love my audiobooks. And that's one of the great things about audiobooks is even though you're listening to somebody else talking about it, you can picture it yourself in your own head.
Tessa, hello. Thank you for hanging out.
Hello.
Very, very kind of you to join us today. You've actually, as folks may or may not know, have already tried your hand at content authoring a little bit. Like, what were you able to get to in your initial experimentation?
The challenge at the very beginning was getting it set up and understanding the file structure, how it's linking to the maps, adding different chests and how that links to the code, and adding more new missions and which things to duplicate from there. And once you get the hang of that, it's kind of like very free flowing from there. You can just keep making more and more and more, and then it gets faster and faster. And I was brand new to Twilio Quest, and I live streamed learning everything from almost square one. I kind of like, read a little bit the day before just to make sure I don't get stuck for 10 hours on just making sure GitHub works on this specific computer. Everything went really well. I somewhat finished a mission in 5.5 hours. But I think the next one would be definitely much quicker than that now that I understand how it works.
Yeah, there's a non-trivial learning curve with all the different file structures, and also the fact that we don't have docs yet does not necessarily help matters. The fact that you were able to make as much progress as you did is pretty impressive. But we're hoping to iron out some of those wrinkles, of course, in the coming weeks and months as we kind of get the tools ready for prime time. The content in there, I checked it out briefly, but it looks like it was doing some Cloudinary API stuff. Like, what were some of the initial things that you tried to put in the mission?
One thing I wanted to focus on is not being a story writer. Like, what kind of fun story would I want to go through that would motivate me to continue with the objectives? And I'm like, well, I love animals, and maybe saving an animal or rescuing an animal would, be exciting. So yeah. I did a Save the Turtle mission, and you basically had to answer the questions, the tech questions that will help you get closer to solving the mystery. And you start out, the first objective is talking about how you just got hired as an intern at a detective agency and you're giving your first mission. What I don't understand is, like, are all the missions supposed to be different stories, or can I keep making the story continue with the next mission? I wasn't really understanding that yet.
That's a great question. So the vibe that we are trying to go for in Twilio Quest as a game generally, and we're hoping to get closer to this model in the 3.2 release, which we're working on now, is that, like, the Fog Owl is like the Starship Enterprise, and it is like the home base where, you will have in the next version, you'll actually have non-player characters on the ship. We started to integrate some of them. So it's not just going to be Cedric. There will be crew members that will be Tulions that you might recognize. Indeed, one of our chatters has foolishly volunteered to become one of the crew members aboard the Fog Owl that you'll be able to interact with. And the idea is that all of the destinations that you can fly to, like from that navigation computer on the Fog Owl, are like the planets that you'd encounter like in an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And do you watch Star Trek at all, or maybe like Firefly, or like what are your sci-fi poisons? I don't think I know that about it.
With Star Trek, I had to forcefully watch it growing up as a kid because my dad was obsessed with it. He had to watch it every single day. It was on every day, or whenever it was on, it was on. So funny. I watched a lot of it, but never like got into the story. I just remember seeing it a lot.
Okay, well that is fine, and I forgive you for not being a hardcore fan like the rest of the Twilio Quest team is, but like the idea is like in roughly 40 minutes of story, like the Enterprise goes to a new planet. There's some kind of central conflict on the planet, and in a relatively tight story loop, or sometimes like spanning multiple episodes, but there would be sort of a rising action, a conflict, a climax, and then some sort of falling action afterwards. And we're trying to design the content in that way. Like the player is always the operator. They're a representative of like this Twilio Quest program, which is this sort of loosely organized organization that's trying to oppose the evil legacy systems. And in the content that we are going to create, it will be the operator encountering the shenanigans of the legacy systems at various locations. So the first like brand new piece of content we're working on is the Arcane API Academy, where you'll learn about like REST APIs and how those things work. But students have been disappearing. Presumably the legacy systems have something to do with it. So the player will be joining one of the houses at this elite academy, participating in their annual competition between the houses as a representative of either House Lovelace or House Turing or some of the other houses at the academy. You'll go through this competition, figure out what's been happening to the missing students, and then hopefully solve the situation there. So I think you're like in the right headspace for sure of considering like, all right, like why does the operator arrive at this new destination? What is the conflict that's happening there? How does the operator solve it? And then like, what's the falling action, or are there any like lasting consequences of those actions? That's maybe more information than you were looking for, and I clearly spent too much time thinking about this. But that's generally the idea.
What I'm trying to think of, just still being very new to using Twilio Quest, is like how can you add to the experience? And you mentioned having you're going to have like custom NPCs of people from the Twilio Quest team. Are you able to make it so you can have an option to turn the voice on and it'll be their voices reading the words? Because that would be cool to hear.
Yeah. So
and it adds accessibility, so it's a win-win all around.
Yeah, for sure. So like we don't have it in the current like template mission, but the idea is going to be that, various NPC objects you can sort of drag in from from the left-hand side here. And if was on my computer, I could actually show
on the
you.
map side, can you add audio to an NPC, or does that have to link to the repository?
You can. Here, I'll show you. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and I'll show you how it works like in the actual game itself. And that's going to be on my, if I seem like I'm looking away from the camera, it's because I have my actual work machine over here that I'm going to be sharing my screen from.
I have multiple monitors going on, so I'm always like looking up, looking right, looking left.
Yep, totally. It is very much a thing. So let me, I'll just go to that GitHub repo, actually.
Copper Bearder, open a chest and get rickrolled.
That is a thing that definitely happens with some regularity. So here, I'll just open this up in Visual Studio Code. And And this is actually not an extension folder. This is actually like the TuliaQuest source tree here. But the contents of this levels folder within and this is like the existing production TuliaQuest. The contents of this levels folder is basically a bunch of extensions. Like you could think about each of these folders as an existing extension because all of them have they have a objectives folder with all of the different objectives. They have maps, which have like all those tiled JSON files. And this is a feature that we're going to be working on next, like bringing into extensions. They also have this conversations folder. So like there's a loop, or there's a way where you can write like dynamic conversation. I modeled this like kind of after here. Let's see, where's kind of a simple one.
A random question to jump
Please.
in before I forget. What if it's years down the road and someone has like 20 extensions installed? Would it be collapsible where they can collapse an extension so that way all the missions don't all show up in one spot? So that way they can focus on specific content of their choosing? That's
a good question. I don't think we had actually thought that far ahead as yet. Oh no. Let me come back here. But that is a good thought. And like it's probably something that we're going to have to solve like in the user interface eventually. Like one thing that we don't currently have, and this is maybe a peek behind the curtain a little bit, but in the mission computer interface, where is like the next version of that? There it is. Ooh. So we don't really have a concept of filtering all of the different missions that you can see in the mission computer. But eventually, I think we'd like to add some kind of like tagging mechanism or other way to kind of filter what we have, available in this interface here. So you could imagine, instead of just having a big list of missions, there's like, show me all the missions that are tagged with Cloudinary or JavaScript or what have you. And like sort of
tagging. Nice.
Yeah. Sort of have introduce some kind of filtering that way too. But yeah, like so basically what's going to happen is this conversations folder, this is going to become part of the extension folder structure as well. And for each of the NPC like conversations, you'll be able to create one of these pug files. And pug is like I don't know if you've used it before, but it's a template language for generating dynamic HTML. And we've created sort of like a looping system, kind of like TWIML, where like we pass in the state of the world to your template file. And then based on the state of the world, you can like create dynamic dialogue. So like if the player responded with, I can't see you or something, like you can have like the NPC have a statement of like, oh, thank goodness. Someone noticed I was still in here, or that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too. Is that on the next update?
Yes, that's going to be coming out in the next update. So it'll probably be like in an alpha 10 or something of the.
That's going to make it even more personalized. I love it.
Yeah, and for certain characters, like right now, the only character that's consistently voiced in the game is Cedric. So for each of these for each of these statements, this is kind of a lot to explain, but like we kind of invented this technology, which we call like conversation HTML. And it's a HTML document, which contains all the information in it for an NPC conversation. Like it contains the markup that's actually shown like in the dialogue that you have with the character. But it also like, has the capability of also playing voiceover files, which also exist here. So like here's all the Cedric voice lines exist here, and you can map those to statements that exist in the conversation. So these are all like the Cedric's statements, and we actually use AWS Poly to automatically generate Cedric's voice. So we like actually have like the AWS Poly like XML tags for like their voice XML equivalent. So like, Cedric, we want to, speak at about 110% of the rate of, the default voice.
Is it always one voice, or can you change it for each NPC with that API?
You can change it to any, if you like, you would have to configure AWS credentials to like use your own account, which we might actually consider using because like AWS Poly is super cheap. Probably it would be abused very quickly. But yeah, if you configured your AWS account credentials, you could generate voice lines for, any of the voices that Poly supports. When I was doing the testing on this, like the reason Cedric is a robot, like British butler, is because like that voice in AWS Poly was like the most, it was the least robotic voice that I could find in there. But you don't have to use Poly either. For each of these statements, you can actually just include an MP3 file with the same ID. So you can see like for a statement, save the day, like this is what Cedric says, like after you have completed the JavaScript mission and you've closed the dimensional rift caused by the lab explosion. The ID for this statement is called save day. And then that maps to, this MP3 file, which is the voice recording for that conversation. So yeah, we definitely need to generate some documentation for this because this is one of the more complex pieces of the authoring tools. But you can include your custom voice lines. You don't have to include voice lines. You can just have text as a part of the conversations, kind of like we have with the different scientists in the JavaScript mission. But yeah, it's possible to like make the conversations dynamic based on the world state as well. So like you might have an NPC say something slightly different if they've completed a certain mission, which is something that we do with some regularity.
I just internally made the decision that I want to be the voice actor for my next project.
Yeah, for sure. You absolutely should. And I've as this content is coming out and the 3.2 release is working, I've kind of tricked a few Twilions into being voice actors for the upcoming version of Twilio Quest as well. So looking forward to making some of my colleagues celebrities, at least my very minor celebrities through Twilio.
I'm happy to critique them.
So Ryan was talking about how another one of the things that y'all have been working on to make authoring a lighter lift for folks is making objects basically do the walk in front of, walk behind illusion without you needing to like have that object broken up into multiple layers and place them correctly across those different layers. And that's awesome.
Yeah, it's true. So the way that let me see if I can pull up Tiled here while I'm talking too, and I can kind of show and tell at the same time. But the general idea is that we, in addition to having the that tile set that David was showing us earlier, where like you have to sort of manually paint all of these things, we want to provide like a palette of higher level objects that you can just kind of drag and drop into the map. So let me see if I can show that with the current version of the tools, or if that's something that we won't be able to see yet. I think we actually will be able to see it, but let me actually validate that before I make promises that I can't keep. But yeah, so with the actual dynamic objects that you can interact with, those are the things that you saw before on like the object layer in Tiled. What we're hoping to be able to do is, or what we already have, like sort of a naive implementation for anyway, is some depth sorting, which is what that is typically called. So when you have like game objects, like when the collision body of the operator is like above above a collidable object's physics body in terms of like the XY coordinate plane of the game, then the game engine will just swap like the Z index of those objects so that you can kind of walk around them in a more natural manner. In the most recent version of the tools, kind of like where we try to provide for the content author, like some visual tools to like make the map. Like, here are all the pretty things like trees. So you can, paint those on the tile layers, which you see over here on the right-hand side. But objects is kind of like where the rubber meets the road on like actual interactable stuff. And we also want to provide a tile set that like essentially provides you a palette of objects too. So when you select that objects layer, you can go to this Twilio Quest objects tile set. And this one's a little bit different, you can see. So like when you select one of these objects, these are intended to be used with not like the same like stamp tool that you used with the tile layers, but rather with this insert tile, like this tile object dropper. So like you select this little tool, and then you select like one of these objects from this tile set, and then you would just kind of drop it at some location in the world. So like for the laser barriers, like maybe I want to have a laser barrier right here, say, that I want to, use to block access to that, which is, I don't know why I would, but because reasons. So I drop in that little laser barrier object. And if I select that object, I can see that it has like some custom properties over here. So if I select that, I can see that it has by default a property called hackable, which indicates like whether or not when you interact with it, it will actually bring up the hack interface. And it also has this objective name property. So this is the objective that this object has been sort of wired up to monitor to see like, well, all right, when this objective is completed, I am going to open myself. And the chests are a similar thing. So I can grab one of these like light blue chests and drop it in up here. And now I also have these properties where I can specify the objective that's going to come up when you interact with it. And because it has this like hackable flag on it, it knows that like, all right, when somebody interacts with me, I'm going to bring up the hack interface and I'm going to show the content for the objective specified here. And the way that the game kind of maps to this objective, if we can come back over here, is like in this objectives folder in the extension. We expect the objectives to be grouped by level name, and in this case we have a VR mission template level. So there's a VR mission template directory, and then any objectives within that directory can be named in this objective name property. So you can kind of map the objects to each other that way. So that's something that you can do in the current version of the tools. In an upcoming version, we hope to have an example of how to create your own objects. So like we are going to over time, like as Team Twilio Quest, continue to expand this palette of objects that you just have for free. But we're also going to include an example of like how you would create your own objects that have their own animations and have their own behavior and stuff like that. So that we think is going to be a pretty important cornerstone to the tools as well.
I was wondering if you would like to tell us about the experiments that you have done with authoring Twilio Quest content, because I know that you've been playing around with that. How have you been finding it?
I've been enjoying it, especially like creating the areas.
On the map?
Yeah, the map. So this is the one I was designing for to do with C# because C# sales. I thought it was a nice little tongue twister. So this is the tilted map that creates like these maps that you see here. Well, not this one, but the actual game ones and that. And it's pretty easy to use because you come with this palette over here. Of like loads and loads and loads of great stuff that are provided. These come in the extension pack, if I remember rightly. And it's just sort of like dragging them on, placing them, and trying to figure out. But like Kevin was showing, you can go around behind different items and everything like that. I think the trickiest thing I found with this was trying to understand the different layers, so that when you like walked around, where you'd go behind stuff and where you wouldn't, and then like blocking off areas. And that was fun. And like I say, it's definitely something I'm not used to doing, because I'm not one of the most visually aesthetic sort of people when I'm designing stuff. But I liked having to play around with this because it was really simple. If I had to draw these things myself, it'd be a whole different ball game. I'd probably be drinking a lot more coffee than I do, and I drink a lot of coffee as it is. So I kind of just had the thought this morning I should have really tried to recreate my own back garden onto this, that have people walk around my garden doing different quests in the garden. But I might do that later on. So, but yeah. But I had fun with doing this, and it's a really good expression thing, and I really like. It's nice to have a break from writing the code and creating something. Because sometimes when you're just there writing code all the time, it just gets a bit laborious on your own time and everything like that. And then when you can have a visual play around with this, it's kind of nice.
Well, Copper Beauty was just talking about how much he's been enjoying playing around with the map, and how being able to even though he's not necessarily normally an arts and crafts kind of human, that it's been really nice to break up his coding time with something visual to play around with. And I also found that to be a nice brain spot to get to scratch when I was working on the PHP missions. It's nice to be able to bounce back and forth, give your brain a kind of different space to play in.
Yeah, totally. And I, heard that the layering the tiles ends up being the biggest mental challenge, and that's definitely true. Just because it's a little bit nicer now in that you can have arbitrary numbers of layers in tiled. So if you need 5 different top layers to make your leaves work exactly the way they need to work, you can do that. But it can be fiddly work, which is why in the early stages we typically don't spend a lot of time figuring out the visual aspects of the map. We usually start off with super crappy square rooms that you just kind of walk around. And once we figure out oh, this is the content that should be in here, then we kind of go through and do the higher fidelity rendering of the room, as it were.
Which is actually one of the things that makes Twilio Quest kind of meta magical, because it is designed to both be a web development app and to teach web development. So it is delightfully meta. So as you progress on your web development career, you are also becoming a more and more qualified Twilio Quest developer.
That is absolutely the case. So there are definitely some inception levels of usage here. But if you are a web developer already, this actually might be an environment you're familiar with. You can kind of see all the HTML in Twilio Quest, of which there is much. There's basically how Twilio Quest works is there's a WebGL canvas behind everything, and that's where we render all of the gamey bits with Phaser, which is the 2D game framework that we use to build Twilio Quest. And then we also have sitting on top of that a React web application that handles all of the user interface for inventory management and settings and all of those things. So that's one of the cool things about this tech stack, if you're into game development generally, is that you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are pretty good at creating user interfaces, but by themselves less good perhaps at doing game things. But because we also have the WebGL canvas, we can use a library like Phaser to give us some of those game development capabilities as well. So
somebody who has developed a game entirely using web technology, and somebody who has tackled the jump to using sort of the 3D animation style interfaces, this hybrid thing is just so incredibly delightful, because it takes away so much of the heavy lift of trying to change your mental context between those styles of development.
Yes, that is definitely true. And like, while most game engines are really good at doing gamey things, like creating objects to a scene and whatnot, if you've ever tried to like create a user interface like in Unity or in like a game engine before, it's not super fun. So like, as much as we as web developers might rag on CSS or whatever sometimes, or like shake our fists at browser quirks, it's still 100 times better than if you tried to do it like by creating it in Unity or something.
It's the tangly universe that we are used to as web developers, and the game development technology is its own tangly universe of
that's fair.
Nuanced knowledge that we don't spend our day to day like up to our eyeballs in, and so that context switching, it's heavy.
Indeed it is. Yes, I suppose like if I were somebody who really preferred to work in the Unity environment, I'd be like, oh man, it's way easier to do UI programming in Unity. But
I have totally known Unity developers that looked like deer in the headlights if you told them that you wanted them to make like a web app, because it's just a very different mental context.
It is indeed.
If you are new to Twilio Quest, Cedric is actually your helper NPC throughout the entire game. So if you are new to Twilio Quest and you're exploring and you see that friendly Cedric robot, that is in fact a friendly robot. He is there for you and has all sorts of interesting information to share with you, and also just random fun things if you want to go ask him questions.
That is true. If you chat him up aboard the Fog Owl, he'll tell you a little bit about the background of the Twilio Quest program. So if you are into the lore of the universe, Cedric is the guy to talk to to learn more about that. So a lot of the challenges also use this integrated code editor, which you can optionally use. Most of the challenges don't require that you use it, actually, but it is expedient sometimes just to provide a chunk of code that you can execute. And in this case, it just asks you to fire up a little local web server and then put that URL in the text field here and click hack. And I've been kind of breezing through it, but you also get these fun little inventory items that you can equip as you complete these different objectives as well. There's also a free one down here. I got to get the free one. And you can kind of equip this little avatar with some different items. And when we check in on the leaderboard for the operation, this little person over here will actually show up and be decked out in all the regalia that you have acquired for them.
And we have an amazing artist named Carrie, and she has actually created special loot items for each of our monthly events that we are doing this year, including our special Earth Day events. So that's another reason to totally RSVP for our events, even though it's optional. It optionally allows us to give you access to those super cool, unique loot items that Carrie has created for each of the individual events that we are doing every month this year. So it's kind of a collectible if you want to look at it that way.
Indeed, it is. It's not an NFT per se, but it's even more fun, I believe.
I think so.